quarter, seed, then give everything a good shake. It's kind of like making a big martini. Then open the lid, just one corner, a little crack. That'll let steam out as it generates. If you forget to do this, the lid's going to go off in there like a mortar. It'll be messy. You don't want that. Now, if you've got a carousel that automatically turns the food, nuke this on high for 10 minutes. If you don't have a carousel, you might consider donating your machine to the local appliance museum, or at the very least, buying one of those wind-up microwave carousels. If you can't manage that, then open the door every 2 minutes during cooking and just turn the container a quarter turn. Now, inside the microwave, a device called a magnetron tube sprays a fluctuating stream of souped-up TV rays called microwaves into a reflective fan, which bounces the energy around the metal enclosure of the oven. Any food that gets in the way is penetrated, and asymmetrical molecules like fat, sugar, and water vibrate, creating friction, therefore heat, which cooks the food. Now, since the air in the oven isn't actually heated, foods that require browning, like meats and bread, don't taste or look good when microwaved. This, on the other hand, does. Now, you can leave this exactly as it is and serve it chunky, or you can mash it, give it the old rustic treatment, or my favorite, buzz it. Almost smooth. Now, if you're not serving right away, let this cool to room temperature, then just chill in the refrigerator. You'll notice that over the next 2-3 days, the flavor is going to intensify. It's going to get even better than it is. Tightly covered and refrigerated, this will keep 2, maybe 3 weeks. What gives a good baking apple the backbone to stand up to an oven's heat? Same stuff that gives us backbone, calcium. Apples high in the mineral, Baldwin's, Northern Spy, Rome's, Granny Smith's, and Braeburn's, will soften as cooked, but like Weebles, they won't fall down. One of the first creations to emerge from the hotbed of American dessert design that was to be known as Pennsylvania Dutch country was the Apple Crisp. An incredibly simple device of just apples baked in a bowl in their own juices, but topped with a wonderful oatmeal device called a streusel. Now, on top of being just insanely delicious, the streusel is infamous for leaving an almost chisel-chipping residue on the bakeware. Now, we have bypassed that problem by going with an edible bowl, the apple. But first, the streusel topping. It doesn't get simpler than this. Starts with 3/4 cups of plain old oatmeal. Not instant oatmeal, not quick oatmeal, not the oatmeal that comes in the little envelopes that has the brown sugar and cinnamon already mixed into it. And the same amount of all-purpose flour, 3/4 of a cup. 2/3 of a cup of light gold brown sugar. It's not the dark stuff, it's just the gold stuff. And when you measure it out, pack it down and then rake it, okay? That's 1/3 and that's 2/3. 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Get through my spoons here. And that's going to be the primary seasoning. But to back that up and give it a little bit of dimension, I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of ginger. Ginger and cinnamon really work well together as a team, and you really don't notice that the ginger is there when there's a little bit more of the cinnamon. And finally, but always, a pinch of kosher salt. This does not make the dessert taste salty. Remember, salt is a flavor enhancer. It's actually going to make the apples taste more appley, the cinnamon taste more cinnamony. You get the drift. So just kind of stir this all together with your hands. And then we're going to work in 1 stick of cold butter, diced. The smaller the pieces that it's cut in before you start, the better. Now, for the next 30 seconds, minute tops, fold with your hands. Just get in there with your fingertips and squeeze the butter against the oatmeal. There, that's what you want. Still chunks of butter, it's still crumbly, and the butter is still nice and hard, which is what you want. If it gets soft on you while you're working, put it in the fridge for a little while. Let it get to hard again before you start working. So, we're going to park that and turn attention to the apples. You're going to need a cutting board. Well, will you look at that? And you're going to need a paring knife and your melon baller. Now, the most important thing about carving up apples or, well, fruits or anything, if you ask me, is you don't do it up in midair. This results in putting your eye out. You want to keep it on the board. Cut off the bottom just enough to open it up and get a nice, stable platform, which we've got. Knife in just at the apex of the curve at about a 45-degree angle. Do not get out your protractor if you are so inclined, just guess. And move the apple against the knife blade. I am not cutting towards my hand. I am holding the knife basically still, just moving it in and out while turning the apple into the knife. It's the safest way to go. And then you get a nice little lid. It's almost like cutting the top out of a jack-o'-lantern for Halloween. Now we still got the core inside there, so that's where the melon baller comes in. Just dig right down in towards the core and kind of just turn that core out. There. Now if you see that little star in the bottom, that means that you've gotten all the seeds out, and that's great. So we've got a nice little reservoir in there. And just repeat that with all the apples. So streusel comes out of the refrigerator, but before we pack these bad boys up, we've got this little reservoir in here to deal with, and I like to fill it up with honey. You don't even have to measure it. Just squeeze it right in there, almost to the top of that little reservoir. So once the little reservoirs are full, you're going to need a baking dish, and you're going to work right over the bowl. So take an apple, scoop up a nice big handful of streusel, and just literally pour it right on top. Then you're going to press this first addition down like that, lightly, almost till it's smooth. Then you're going to add another layer and just sprinkle that one on and into the baking dish. Now I like to use as small a pan as possible because I think it kind of helps the apples to cook. The heat kind of bounces off the pan and browns the outside. But you don't want them touching, so just space them out so that they're not touching each other or the sides of the pan. There. Now into a 350-degree oven, either in the middle or top rack is fine. And I'm going to set the timer for 40 minutes. And I'm not even going to look in there until this goes off. Now since every apple variety is different, it's impossible to pin a cooking time on the dessert. You must apply the Charmin squeeze. Now, if you're used to handling nuclear material with your bare hands, you can use your fingers for this. Me, I'll stick with tongs. Just grab along the equator and squeeze gently. If nothing happens, you got more baking to do. But if the fruit yields to the will of the tongue, like that, time's up. Now, while you're here, you might as well check them all, because one raw apple spoils the bunch. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Like avocados and bananas, apples are auto-stimulators. It means they're capable of ripening even after they're picked. Now this mean trick is made possible by a gas called ethylene, which is produced by the fruit itself. Apples, in fact, are such prolific ethylene producers that an underripe bunch of bananas will ripen in half the time if closed in a paper bag with a ripe apple. Now, ethylene production, unfortunately, signals the apple's final demise, but it can be halted, or at least slowed down, if the apple is kept cold and is deprived of oxygen. Now, New England growers a century ago used to seal their apples in barrels immediately after harvest, and they sunk them in lakes and rivers for the winter. When retrieved after spring thaw, the fruit hadn't aged a day. Today, airtight cold rooms loaded with nitrogen gas have replaced the sunken barrels, making it possible for an apple picked young in November to ripen here in your fridge come February. Now you can add to the longevity of your apples by keeping them in plastic bags. I like the ones with little holes in them. Keep them refrigerated and away from other ethylene producers, unless of course you're trying to speed the hands of time. And be sure to remove any bad apples that show themselves. See, once just a single apple goes rotten to the core, its ethylene production skyrockets, and that definitely will spoil the whole bunch. Now, we hope we've piqued your interest in and appetite for the great American apple. You know, they really are a lot like Americans. They've got so many individual characteristics that you just can't rigidly categorize them. You've got to spend some time with them, get to know them on their own terms. Now, you can use these three dishes as kind of gauges to familiarize yourself with the Apple Nation and what it can do in your kitchen. Oh, geez, I hate to see those guys. That's why I eat one of these a day. You see, besides 5 full grams of fiber, apple skin contains a powerful antioxidant. It's called flavonoids. And some new recent research shows that it may actually lower both heart attacks and cancer. Excuse me. Hiya, Doc. Here you go. This should keep you away from yourself for at least a day. How you like them apples? See ya. And we'll see you next time on Good Eats.